On December 20th, 1965, at 5:45 p.m., Susan Brady left her friend Cecilia at the corner of School Street and Albert Avenue in Rockford, Illinois, to walk the remaining blocks home. The pretty 11-year-old was never seen by friends or family again. Welcome to an audio version of an original article by Kathi Kresol, operator of Haunted Rockford Paranormal Events, Rockford, Illinois. This audio presentation is entitled Unfathomable, The Murder of Susan Brady, and contains the 2015 story which originally appeared in Murder Mayhem in Rockford, Illinois by Kathi Kresol. This audio article is produced by Thomas Saunders for Haunted Rockford. Susan Brady and Cecilia Burns were very excited. They were helping clean blackboards in their classroom at St. Patrick's before heading over to Cecilia's house to do homework and listen to records. It was December 20th, 1965, and it was chilly, so the girls bundled up before leaving the school. Susan had received new boots as an early Christmas present from her parents and was excited to wear them. They left the school around 3:15 p.m. and walked to Cecilia's house on Irving Avenue. The time passed all too quickly, and soon it was time for Susan to go home for dinner. Cecilia offered to walk part of the way with her since it got dark so quickly at that time of the year. They walked to the intersection of School Street and Albert Avenue together before going their separate ways at 5:45 p.m. Susan still had quite a walk ahead of her to reach her house at 703 North Day Avenue. Cecilia was frightened by strange noises on the way home and looked back several times to check on Susan's progress. She would be the last person to see Susan Brady alive. Susan was the daughter of James and Norma Brady. In 1965, they had 3 sons, Mike, 16, Tim, 14, and Tom, 9, and 2 daughters, Susan, 11, and Nancy, 5. James worked as a reporter for the Rockford Labor News. Susan's mother, Norma, grew concerned as the sky darkened and the day turned into evening. Susan was always home by dinner. After James came home from work, they looked for her on foot, following the route that Susan would have taken home. They spoke to Cecilia, who told them she left Susan at the intersection of Albert Avenue and School Street. As the evening grew later, they searched with their car. 2 hours after they started searching, they decided to call the police. James explained later that he didn't want to involve the police too early. The family really felt Susie would walk in the door any second, but of course she didn't. The next day, there was still no sign of Susan, and more people got involved in the search. On December 22nd, the search became a full-blown effort. There were men with dogs and others on foot who were divided into teams of 5 men accompanied by a police officer. These search parties were all coordinated from the No. 6 firehouse at 430 North Springfield Avenue. Police Sergeant Robert Selgren coordinated the ground search and gave the more than 200 volunteers their last-minute instructions. There were also 10 airplanes taking part in the search under the supervision of Captain H.W. Lundberg. They were in the air looking for anything that should be checked out by the ground crew. Susan's father and 2 older brothers helped in the search. Norma sat in their beautiful home waiting for some word that Susan had been found, safe and sound. The house had been decorated for Christmas, and they plugged in the tree every night so the house would be all lit when Susan came home. As the massive search was taking place, Susan's school held a special prayer service and over 600 students attended. Susan was in Sister Leora's 6th grade class, and the day's newspapers had quotes from the teacher and several of Susie's classmates describing her. Sister Leora said that Susie was a good student, quiet, conscientious, and helpful to her fellow classmates. Susan's friends said she was fun, friendly, and that she loved to dance to her favorite group, the Beatles. On Christmas Eve, the Brady family asked for a special Christmas wish. Our only request is that everyone pray for her safe return and keep looking in their yards to see if they can find her. James Brady was quoted in the paper. They also thanked the community for the great response. Many people helped by taking part in the search, answering the telephone, bringing food for the family and volunteers, and by assisting with the older Brady children. The whole community seemed determined to find this little girl. The family also received a very special gift from Bishop Loris T. Lane of the Rockford Diocese, who had just returned from the Vatican. The bishop brought the family a special wooden figure of the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus that had been blessed by the Pope. He gave the family the beautiful gift on Christmas Eve, There was a $2,500 reward offered for information leading to the safe return of Susan by the Rockford Register-Republic and the Rockford Morning Star newspapers. Other people, including a number of children, gave money toward the reward. Later, the Chamber of Commerce added another $1,000 to the reward. The hunt for Susan continued. One search was focused on the Sugar River area. In January, the focus became the Burr Oaks Road area. Deputy Sheriff Michael reported that between 40 and 50 members of the Purple Night Drum and Bugle Corps from St. Patrick's School and the Loves Park Volunteer Fire Department participated in that search area. The Christmas tree at the Brady's house still stood with the lights twinkling every night, even through the middle of January. Susan's father said, "We still are hoping to have our family's Christmas celebration." He went on to say the family was back to normal on the outside, returning to work and school. But underneath, they still jumped every time they heard a car pull into the driveway or when the phone rang. Around the middle of January, claims from several young girls came to the attention of the police. One girl said that on the day that Susan went missing, December 20th, 1965, she was walking just a few blocks from where Susan was last seen. The 12-year-old little girl was walking home on the 1300 block of Blaisdell Street around 5:30 p.m. A man driving a 1961 green Cadillac pulled over to the side of the road and asked the girl if she wanted a ride. The girl refused, turned the corner, and walked quickly away. The man drove away in the same direction where Susan was walking home. Police asked for information from anyone who might have seen the car or the man described by the little girl. The Brady family was very forthcoming about the agony their family was going through. As the police search spread and the searchers began to look into cisterns and wells, the family was still waiting for the phone to ring. The Bradys hadn't told their youngest child, Nancy, about Susan's disappearance. They sent the little girl to friends' houses to spend time there. "We are trying to keep her away from home as much as possible. This house is not the right atmosphere for a child," Norma stated. The Bradys were very touched by how wonderful and compassionate people had been to them. Cards, telegrams, and well wishes arrived at the house every day. These cards were not just from Rockford, but from all over the country. Valentine's Day, 1966, started out as a bright, crisp day, but quickly turned dark as the family finally learned what had happened to their beautiful young daughter. The family's hopes for reuniting with Susan were completely smashed. James and Norma were told that 25-year-old Russell Charles Dewey surrendered to FBI agents in California after returning from a flight to Mexico. The older boys were brought home by a priest from St. Patrick's, and the younger boy was met by his family for a special mass. Again, James and Norma impressed all who knew them by their graciousness in the midst of this awful tragedy. "At least now we know," they both said, explaining that the worst thing was imagining what might have happened. It didn't make it any easier, but at least they knew that their little girl was in heaven, beyond any pain and fear. The police became suspicious of Dewey when they received reports from multiple young girls of a man in a 1961 Cadillac stopping them to offer a ride home. Dewey owned such a car until January 4th, when he sold the car to Genrich and Harris Auto Sales. A day later, he quit his job and left for San Diego. During questioning, Dewey stated that he was driving on School Street around 5:45 in the evening when little Susie ran right out in front of his car near St. Patrick's Church's driveway. Dewey scooped Susan up and placed her in the front seat on his trench coat to rush to Rockford Memorial Hospital for medical treatment. He drove as fast as he could, but when he reached the entrance, the little girl was dead. He checked her heartbeat and pulse, but it was no use. She was already gone. Dewey became frightened, he said, because he had no insurance and was afraid of being sued. Later on February 14th, at a press conference, Rockford Police Chief Delbert Peterson shared the sad news of Susie's death and Dewey's arrest for the crime. "I'm proud today to be a police officer," Peterson stated. He was proud of the police force for finding the clues that led to the arrest of the person responsible for what happened to Susie. Peterson explained to reporters that Dewey had admitted killing Susan but stated that it was an accident. Peterson also reported that they had found no evidence of Susan in the car. State's Attorney William Nash then spoke to describe some of the clues that were followed to solve Susan's murder. The men described the search for the car reported by the little girl. Following this lead, they came upon Dewey's name for the first time. Their suspicions grew when they found out he had sold the car, quit his job, and then left town after Susan's disappearance. The police involved the FBI to hunt Dewey down while they started to look for evidence in Rockford. The police found out that Dewey had moved in with Mr. and Mrs. Floyd Carruthers, his grandparents, during the summer of 1965. The police searched the Carruthers home after the reports from the attempted kidnap of the little girl on the day Susie disappeared. The search led to finding an incinerator made from a 50-gallon drum. They also found some suspicious matter in the ashes in the bottom of the can that appeared to be human bone. The police sent that to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. It would eventually come back as being bone from a child 8 to 12 years old. A fugitive warrant was issued for Dewey. Dewey admitted he was staying at the Carruthers house during December while his grandparents were in Florida. This is where he decided to take Susie after he realized she was dead. He told police that he panicked after he realized that she was dead, and he drove to his grandparents' house on West State Street near Meridian. It was here that he jammed Susan's body, her book bag, and his trench coat into a 50-gallon incinerator. He used gasoline to set the items on fire. Dewey was shocked when his uncle stopped by the house for a visit. He convinced the uncle to join him inside the house to watch television. Dewey stepped out to check on the fire several times. There were some larger pieces of bone left, and Dewey disposed of these in the Winnebago County landfill located next to the JL Case plant where he worked. The police didn't believe Dewey's story of an accident. They felt that he had abducted little Susan and taken her to the garage behind his home, where he killed her with a sledgehammer. It took some time before Dewey was brought back to Rockford. Dewey was very concerned about returning to Rockford because he didn't think he would get a fair trial there. Assistant State's Attorney Alfred Cowan flew out to San Diego to serve the warrant for Dewey's arrest for the murder of Susan. Dewey was returned to Rockford in March. His attorney argued for a change of venue, and it was finally decided that the trial would be held in Sycamore, Illinois, about 40 miles from Rockford. Dewey was born in Rockford on December 9, 1940. His parents were Charles and Ardith Dewey. His father died when he was very young, and his mother remarried 3 times. Dewey dropped out of high school and found employment in a factory, and then as a landscaper. Russell Dewey was married the first time to Sandra Jean on December 21, 1963, and divorced her on April 10, 1964. Dewey next married Sue E. on August 22, 1964, and divorced her on August 12, 1965. He had charged both of the women with mental cruelty. Sandra and Russell did attempt reconciliation during November and December 1965, but Sandra returned to her second husband. There was nothing in Russell Dewey's background to indicate that he was capable of such a horrible crime. On February 22, 1966, St. Patrick's Church held a memorial service for Susan. Hundreds of family, friends, classmates, and members of the Rockford community came together to pay their last respects for the little girl so many had searched for and prayed would be returned safe and sound. The church was filled with beautiful flowers and the sounds of music. The Brady family was there with other family members. Many who attended spoke of being impressed with the inspirational way the Brady family conducted themselves. The Brady family asked the community for fair treatment of the man who killed their daughter. The trial of Russell Dewey began on August 8, 1966, in Sycamore, Illinois. Roy S. Lasswell was Dewey's defense attorney. State's Attorney William Nash was assisted by Assistant State's Attorney Alfred W. Cowan, and Circuit Judge Charles G. Seidel presided over the trial. Dr. J. Lawrence, physical anthropologist at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., testified that the largest piece of bone found in the incinerator was a vertebra from an immature person. He also testified that the other bone fragments found came from a child 8 to 12 years old. 4 little girls also testified during the trial and told the jury how a man in a green 1961 Cadillac had approached them. When asked if they could identify the man, all 4 immediately pointed to Dewey sitting at the defense table. In a dramatic moment during the trial, Lasswell grabbed an axe that was sitting on a desk, picked up the axe, and hurled it past the jury back into the corridor, just missing a deputy sheriff by 6 inches. "That's not to be in the courtroom and you know it," he shouted at the judge, referring to the judge's decision not to allow the axe in the courtroom at the end of the trial because the part it played in the alleged murder was not made clear. Judge Seidel remained calm and told him to sit down, and a court bailiff retrieved the axe and returned it to the courtroom. Norma Brady, Susan's mother, was the last of the 33 witnesses called by State's Attorney Nash. Her sorrow was hard to watch, and many in the court had tears in their eyes when she stepped from the stand. The defense called 13 witnesses, and Dewey was the last to testify for the defense. On August 22nd, the DeKalb County jury deliberated for 3 hours and 47 minutes. They had the choice between verdicts of not guilty, or guilty, or guilty, with the recommendation of the death penalty. Judge Seidel warned the courtroom that he would tolerate no outburst as the verdict was read. Jury foreman Frank Kuzan handed the verdict to the clerk. The air was thick with tension as everyone waited to hear the verdict. Dewey did not even look up as Deputy Circuit Clerk Wayne Lutala read the verdict. Russell Dewey was found guilty of the murder of 11-year-old Susan Brady. He showed no emotion, but his first wife, Sandra, was in the courtroom and began to cry. Dewey patted her arm as if to comfort her. His mother and grandparents were also in the courtroom and were obviously shaken by the verdict. Dewey apparently did his time without any further incidents, and news came in February 1987 that Dewey would be released in April. There were a lot of people who were angered by the release. Dewey was originally sentenced to 20 to 50 years, but was released after serving 20. Susan's memory was honored by the opening of the Susan Brady Memorial Library at St. Patrick's Elementary School. The Bradys dedicated the money that had been donated by community members, students, and the Chamber of Commerce. On the anniversary of Susan's 20th birthday, St. Patrick's Church held a special memorial mass in her name. Susan and her family are still remembered by many in the city of Rockford. The little girl who disappeared so long ago joined Rockford together in a way that nothing had before. Her death touched everyone, and some would say that it changed Rockford forever. This is the end of our audio article. Thanks for listening.